Hello Internet, and welcome to a new tutorial. Transitions are an essential part of every structure. They help manipulate the energy of the track and introduce new sections and new elements. In a nutshell, they must be nailed. That's why in today's tutorial I'm going to show you everything you need to know about transitions and what are my most used techniques in my tracks. So how about we just jump to the desk and see what this tutorial is all about. Alright, so here we are in front of Bitwig, and this is the demo track for my new Vital preset bank. And originally, I've wanted to work on the same project as last week's, but this track has way too many transitions that I thought it's just the best candidate for a transition tutorial. So the first kind of transitions I've wanted to talk about is the one beat transition. Now, we've talked about this transition in last week's tutorial. Essentially, we will either take one kick or we will take one beat basically of the bassline pattern and add one kick, and we will create our transition. This transition comes every 8 to 16 bars, and it's usually there just to add more dynamics to the energy of the structure. The whole goal behind it is just to take a little bit of the energy of the dance floor and give it back right away. So it just makes things more dynamics, as I mentioned. Now, it sounds like this. And of course, if we don't like one kick, we will add one beat of the bassline pattern and we'll have this. But of course, this is not enough. We have to make things a bit more dynamic. So for that, I've added in here a simple hat roll. And it's basically just a really simple roll of the closed hats in here. And you can see that I've used a linear pattern for the velocity, going from, let's say, how much is this? 26% to 100% or 127, depends on how your DAW shows velocity. And the whole point of it is just to make it fade in. You know, like you don't want the hats to hit right away in full volume. You want it to fade in, make things, it's some sort of an ear candy at the same time, right? And it sounds like this. See, like they are fading in, and while they're fading in, they give some energy back to the dance floor. It's really important to add like these little ear candy in here. Maybe you can add like a little snare roll, like maybe like 1 or 2 hits of snare, something like that. Just make things a bit more dynamic. Now, the second type of transitions that I personally use a lot is the one bar transition. Now, I've talked about my logic in these transitions in the last tutorial, so if you're not following, please check it out. I'll leave a link right in here. But essentially, these transitions comes every 16 to 32 bars, and the whole point of them is to introduce a changement in the track. So either you're introducing new leads or you're introducing a break. And in this case, I am introducing a break. So what we have to do in here is basically take everything off for one bar. Now, I like to keep like one kick hit. I always feel like keeping one kick hit just adds some sort of, adding a crash makes a lot of noise, right? Or an impact. It's just like a lot of noise. But a kick, it's something that was playing there, and when you add it, it does exactly the same job as a crash or an impact, like it marks the time, like it gives like some sort of a hit, but it's not too noisy. It doesn't take a lot of place, if that makes sense, in the structure. And also, we need to add some sort of a trippy lead, something to add contrast. Again, I've explained this concept in last week's tutorial, so go check it out. But basically, we had these FMs in here with the squelch talking with each other's, and when the transition comes, I always find it way more interesting to have this kind of a contrast, super trippy lead, something that doesn't have like a Gatling energy, to it, to introduce this trippy break, which is coming. So all in all, it sounds like this. See how this lead helped us introduce the trippiness of the break? I mean, if I'll take it off and I'll add an FM lead in here, check how it just, at least to my ears, it doesn't make sense, energy and storytelling wise. Check this out. I don't know, but for me, it feels like a slap on the face. Just the energy and the storytelling that doesn't match. Like in here, it's like full power energy and then like super trippy. I don't know. It doesn't add up, at least for me. So a trippy lead that does the contrast. There's a couple more details for these transitions to make them as smooth as possible. And the first one is to introduce the element that is coming right after that transition. So for instance, and here we have this super trippy lead, sounds like this. And basically, the simplest way to introduce it is you take a little portion of it, like as small as maybe 1 beat, 2 beats, but 1 beat is more than enough. You drown it in reverb and then you reverse it. So you'll basically get this kind of sweeps. Check this out. It's a subtle sweep that you'll add right before this lead. It's there, you almost don't hear it, but you can still feel it. And it'll help make things just flow like water, if that makes sense. So basically the transition without it, we had this. And with it, we have this. See, it's there in the background and just make things smooth, just make things flow naturally, if that makes sense. And the second detail is to high pass the kick and bass just a tiny bit, so it'll help us with this concept of taking the energy, from the dance floor. So when you take the energy from the dance floor, like right in here, when you take off everything, the kick and bass and the drums, it won't be that of a surprise. You know what I mean? Just, again, make things flow more naturally. So in here, I have a little high pass. I've already added some automations, They're pretty basic. Check this out. This is my high pass, pretty linear, going from 69 hertz to 267 hertz. You don't want to go as high as 500 hertz. 300, 400 hertz is more than enough. Automate the resonance just a tiny bit. You don't want a lot of it, but you still want to feel it. And before we play this, I like to make things smoother by adding a reversed crash. But this is a personal preference. I know a lot of my friends hate me because I add a lot of these things, but I like them, So, sounds like this. Just make things smoother and flow more naturally, if that makes sense. As I mentioned earlier, or maybe I did not, but anyhow, the one-bar transitions are the ones that I use the most in my structures, and they come in so many different shapes and colors, let's say. It really depends on what I'm trying to do. So as I showed earlier, I was introducing a break, and I've used them to take away the energy of the dance floor, introduce a trippy element, and then, move on to a break. Now, that break came to an end in here, and I want to give the energy back to the dance floor. But at the same time, I don't want it to go like full energy, because this part is some sort of a pre-drop, if that makes sense, and the re-drop comes right in here. So what I did, I've added these simple open hat hits. They help, every kind of hit, whether it's kick hits, kick and open hat hits, like in this case, or even a drum roll, you will use them to charge the structure with some energy. So in this example in here, we have these hits, a little snare roll, like it's really simple, check this out. And together, they will just give us enough energy to transition from the break to the pre-drop. Sounds like this. They give just enough energy to recharge the structure and make it more danceable. And of course, we don't forget a really important element in these transitions, and that's the sweep. So in here, I've added this sweep. Something to help, take this energy and deliver it to the dance floor. So without the sweep, we had this. Sounds okay, but with the sweep, it's like you took the energy, you put it on a pillow, and then you went to your girlfriend and gave her, that pillow I don't know if this makes sense. I just made that up. It's not scripted, but yeah, it makes a lot of sense in my mind. Hope it makes sense for you. But, anyhow, it's like you take the energy and you give it in a really delicate way back to the dance floor. And again, it makes everything flows more naturally. For the next example, it's the transition from this pre-drop to the main drop. And in here, I just kept things as simple as it gets. First of all, I've added a super triple lead for the contrast again. Because, behind it we had, again, some FMs going. And in here, because the bass line goes back to its main groove, I thought it's a better idea to reintroduce the groove of the bass line instead of adding drum rolls and drum hits. And this way, it's like a reminder that was the groove of the track, now you're getting it back. So in my opinion, it gives way more energy to the dance floor again. And before I forget, I've added a simple closed hat roll in here, just like the other one. It's actually exactly the same pattern, and a simple snare roll in here. And all in all, sounds like this. And the last type of the one-bar transitions that I like to do is the drum roll one. And in this case, what I like to do is I take off everything. There's no triple lead, there's nothing. There's maybe a little sweep, and in this case, by the way, I've used a little sweep. It sounds like this. Yep, pretty straightforward. And what I'll do, I'll take maybe 2 or 3 drum loops. I'll take the hits that I like from them and I'll rearrange them the way I like. So in this case, I took 2 loops from the Spiral Breakbeats. They've been released by Reversible Records. Check them out. They're really awesome. And basically, I've rearranged them the way I like them, and they sound like this, rearranged. And these drum rolls are, in my opinion, the best way to create a transition that will give the energy back to the dance floor, but like 10 times groovier than what it was before it. And if you're going to listen to this transition, like all in all, it sounds like this. Just make things way groovier. And before I forget, always put a simple reverse crash or, reversed impact or whatever, just to introduce things. Not every time, but in this case, it just makes things, again, flow way more naturally. So yeah, I've added a simple reversed crash in here. Now remember, what makes a track stand out is the variety of transitions you're using and when you're using them. I mean, you can't use the same kind of transitions throughout a 7-minute structure. Always mix and match and experiment with new types of transitions. Maybe use a kick roll somewhere, maybe filter with a low pass instead of a high pass, etc., etc. Always make it some sort of a surprise. And with this is the end of this tutorial. I really hope you've liked it. If you like my work and want to support it, check out my preset packs and masterclasses on my Gumroad, or you can become a Patreon, or just leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Things like that helps the channel a lot. But for now, I'll see you in the next one.